The river is quiet at dawn. Mist drifts across the surface, curling like smoke from a candle just blown out. It's peaceful, in a way that doesn't feel right. The kind of peace that hides something. I've stood by a lot of rivers, but this one feels like it's watching me. Welcome to Crime Uncoded. Tonight, we follow a current that's carried more than water. It's carried secrets, whispers, and the last moments of women who never made it home. This is the story of Gary Ridgway, the man they would call the Green River Killer. But calling him just a killer leaves too much out. This is about someone who wore the mask of an ordinary life so well that no one saw what was underneath. It's about how years can pass while evil moves quietly in the background. And it's about a river that saw it all, but never said a word. It starts in the summer of 1982, when the Green River spoke for the first time. July 15, 1982. Morning light was just breaking through the clouds when a boy spotted something caught on the pilings of Peck Bridge in Kent, Washington. At first, it looked like trash, maybe a blanket wrapped around driftwood. But as he got closer, the shape changed. Skin, stillness, a body. 16-year-old Wendy Lee Caulfield. People called her a runaway, but she had a life. Friends, moments, plans. All of it ended here. She'd been strangled and left in the Green River. The current had tried to take her further, but the bridge held her. Police moved around the scene, boots sinking into mud. They took photos, scribbled notes, whispered guesses. No one there knew they were looking at the first in a long line of victims. To them, it was a tragedy. One case. The river knew better. This was just the start. The current had learned to carry death without leaving a trace. In the weeks after Wendy's body was found, the river became busy. 3 more women, Marcia Chapman, Cynthia Hines, and Opal Mills, turned up near each other. Not scattered, but grouped. Almost like the killer wanted police to see the connection. All were strangled. Many worked the streets or lived in unstable situations. People the killer knew wouldn't be missed right away. By August, 6 women had been pulled from the river. Detectives realized this wasn't random. It was deliberate. It was speeding up. The King County Sheriff's Office formed the Green River Task Force. Maps, photos, and pins filled their war room. Strings stretched between names and places like a spider's web. Detectives questioned pimps, truck drivers, anyone who might have seen something. But the killer was always ahead. He didn't just know how to hide. He knew who the world didn't look for. And the river kept carrying his trail, just out of reach. In the Kenworth truck plant, Gary Leon Ridgway blended into the machinery. He was a spray painter, precise, quiet, unremarkable. He clocked in, clocked out, went home, sometimes to a wife, sometimes to a girlfriend. He attended church, smiled at neighbors. That was his greatest weapon, invisibility. He wasn't the shadow lurking in alleys. He was the man you would think twice about when you saw him at the grocery store. Ridgway had been questioned early in the investigation, more than once. He even passed a polygraph in 1984. His calm demeanor, his bland ordinariness, made him seem incapable of the brutality being committed along the Green River. But that's the thing about people like him. They survive by never being the person you suspect. And as long as you're looking for the monster in the dark, you'll miss the one standing in the light. Let's take a step back for a moment. What's your take on this so far? Drop your theory in the comments. I read them all. And if you're still with me, don't forget to subscribe. The story only deepens from here. Long before the Green River took its first victim, Gary Ridgway's life was already steeped in shadows. He grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah, in a house where rules were strict, but boundaries were blurred. Emotions didn't have a safe place to land. His mother was meticulous, controlling, and often belittled his father and him. Ridgway later talked about a deep resentment, a mix of shame and twisted attraction that festered into something darker. As a boy, he struggled in school. Dyslexia kept him behind his peers. He was the kid you could overlook, easy to dismiss. But cracks were showing early. Once, as a teenager, he lured a young boy into the woods and stabbed him in the ribs. The boy lived. Ridgway's explanation was chilling in its simplicity. He wanted to know what it would feel like. He said it flatly, without emotion. Words that would follow him for decades. In early adulthood, he went through marriages like worn-out clothes, quick beginnings, messy endings. Infidelity was common. Restlessness seemed constant. He was always searching, but never satisfied. State Route 99 was more than a road to Gary Ridgway. It was his hunting ground. The strip was lined with dim motels, parked trucks, and alleys where deals were made in whispers. He knew every corner. His job as a truck painter gave him an excuse to roam. He could cruise through industrial zones and side roads without drawing suspicion. The women he approached were often desperate, for cash, for a small ounce of trust. He was polite, soft-spoken. Sometimes he even brought his young son with him. That alone disarmed people. More than one survivor remembered thinking he seemed normal. The pattern was simple, and that's what made it terrifying. Pick up the woman, drive to an isolated spot, maybe deep in the woods, maybe near the river. Straight her, often with his bare hands. Leave the body in a cluster of others, sometimes returning later. Those clusters weren't random. They slowed discovery. They confused the timeline. And the fact that he revisited the sites, that detail sits uneasily in the mind. For Ridgway, the road itself became an accomplice, carrying him from one victim to the next. This part comes from a Reddit post in r True Crime. And it's backed up by the official case files. When the Green River investigation began to stall, detectives turned to an unusual consultant, Ted Bundy. By then, Bundy was on death row in Florida. He had nothing to lose, but the attention. That was something he never turned down. He told investigators the Green River killer might revisit his victims, going back to the bodies to relive the act. His advice? Stake out the dump sites. Watch for anyone circling back. He also guessed the killer probably had a steady job, one that kept him unnoticed, but gave him freedom to move. He was right on both counts. Ridgway did revisit some scenes. He did keep a steady job, and he did blend in without effort. For detectives, it was unsettling, taking advice from one predator to catch another. For Bundy, it was a way to wedge himself into a story that wasn't his. Sometimes, to catch a killer, you have to understand the language they speak. Years after Ridgway's arrest, some criminologists started asking a different question. Was this only about his psychology? Or did the place itself shape him? The Green River Valley in the 60s and 70s was an industrial corridor. Factories dumped waste into the air, water, and soil. Paint fumes, solvents, lead, arsenic. Chemicals we now know can damage the brain, dulling impulse control, fueling aggression over time. No one is saying pollution creates killers. But in the messy architecture of human behavior, maybe those toxins added one more unstable layer. Paired with his upbringing, his personality, and his isolation, you get someone who can tuck horror neatly into everyday life. It's only speculation, but it makes a certain uncomfortable sense. A river can carry invisible chemicals for miles, and an idea, dark, corrosive, can drift quietly through a life, shaping choices in ways no one notices. Some currents stay hidden until you drink the water. For almost 20 years, the Green River Task Force chased a ghost. Then, in 2001, patience finally met technology. Back in the early 80s, small biological samples from victims were collected and frozen, waiting for the day science could pull more from them. That day came when advanced DNA testing tied those samples to Gary Ridgway. The link wasn't random. In 1987, when suspicion first brushed close, Ridgway had been asked for a saliva sample. It sat quietly in storage for years, until the machines could give it a voice. When confronted, Ridgway's calm mask began to crack. DNA didn't bend to denial. Facing the death penalty, Ridgway offered a deal. His life for the truth. He would plead guilty to dozens of killings and lead police to more bodies, if they agreed to take execution off the table. For many families, knowing the truth was worth more than revenge. In court, he admitted to killing 48 women. His tone was flat, almost bored. Later, he hinted the number could be closer to 70, maybe 80. He claimed he couldn't remember them all. To him, the women weren't people. They were things, disposable. Even hardened detectives flinched at his words. Over months, he led investigators to forgotten sites, deep woods, ravines, quiet riverbanks. He found them with ease years later. His memory for those places was unnerving. Every recovered victim was both an answer and a wound. Closure, but never peace. Some bargains with the devil aren't made for redemption. They're made to reclaim what the dark has stolen. Today, Gary Ridgway sits in a cell at Washington State Penitentiary. Life without parole. The mask is gone, but what's left is disturbingly plain. He talks about his crimes with an ease that feels wrong. When asked why, his answers change. Sometimes he frames it as cleansing the streets of prostitutes. Other times, he admits it was for the thrill. Remorse is rare, and when it shows, it feels rehearsed. Up close, he doesn't look like the boogeyman. No piercing stare, no aura of danger. Just another older man in prison clothes. Maybe that's the most unsettling thing. That someone so ordinary could walk among us unnoticed and still fade into the background even after we know what he's done. Evil doesn't always wear a monstrous face. Sometimes it has no face at all. The current never stops. It slides past bridges and bends, carrying silt, leaves, and the weight of what it's seen. Gary Ridgway is locked away. The Green River keeps flowing. Both, in their own way, unchanged. We can name the killer. We can name some of the victims. But the why, the thing that matters most, stays just out of reach. Was it his childhood? His circumstances? A flaw in his nature? Or something quieter in the very place he lived? I'm Crime Uncoded. Thanks for walking with me along this riverbank, for hearing the echoes beneath the surface. Subscribe and join me again, because there are always more shadows to follow, more currents to trace, and more stories the water is waiting to tell.